to come to this place where I'm accepting of the fact that, I may not be healed. I may have to deal with something like this for the rest of my life. And I don't want to say there's comfort in that. It's more so that I have this relinquishing of authority, I would say. I'm not the one that has to deal with the ins and outs of getting this solved, if that's the case. And with that being the case, I think about when I was younger, I dealt with eczema for a long time. I dealt with severe eczema from, maybe 2 years old up until I was maybe 11 or 12. That's when I started using topical steroids. And, at that point, it was detrimental. It was really hard to deal with because as a young kid, you can't go outside. You can't do a lot of things that you would typically do. And I had to give up a lot of things that would have probably been game-changing, and having to walk through that and dealing with the repercussions now. I'm not sure what I'm dealing with when it comes to that, but I do know that there's this aspect of wanting to stay comfortable because I was so uncomfortable. I think that's something that's not really talked about a lot. And so in this state of always being uncomfortable, always being itchy, always being tired, always being in pain, and I'm not saying it's worse than anybody else's. I'm just saying that you get used to discomfort so much that you'll try to find comfort in anything. And so that led me down some other paths. And it's weird to say, but that small, albeit it was pretty impactful, that's a small aspect of my entire life, was me dealing with eczema. Dealing with that led to me looking for comfort in so many other areas. And I did not realize that until more recently after, starting the TSW journey, where I kind of relapsed on some of those things, where I kind of fell back into doing some old habits that I thought I had given up, right? So now thinking about how I can be more, in more of a positive state while I'm walking through this, I have to understand that there's this aspect of trauma, quote unquote trauma, that I'm having to accept, I'm having to face head on and understand that there's this aspect that I can control and there's a lot more that I can't control. So on a day to day, I can do everything right, but if the weather's wrong, then it's going to mess up my skin for a week. If I do great for a week and then, I eat something while we're out and it has an ingredient that I've been, avoiding for the last 2 years, then I'm out for the month dealing with symptoms and whatnot. And it's this constant mental battle of trying to figure out, am I doing everything right? There has to be almost no allowance for getting anything wrong. And that's probably the hardest part of this journey. But what it showed me is that I, one, need to take account of everything that I have going on. And two, I also need to be aware of everything in every second of every day. So that's me being aware of how my body's feeling, what I'm eating, what I'm doing, how long I'm doing something for, if I'm getting enough sleep, if I'm getting enough water, if I'm exercising enough, if I'm exercising too much, if I'm training too hard. The most tiring part about it is that it is constant. But I guess the most relieving part about it is that I don't really have to worry about some of the other things that I dealt with before. So, for example, I dealt with vanity a lot growing up because, most of my memorable childhood anyways, I had dealt with eczema. And so when I came out of that state and I saw my actual fully healed skin, I was like, oh, I'm actually kind of a good looking dude. I didn't know this. Because, I had no eyebrows. I still don't, as you can see. They're coming back, but it's slow. I was like, yeah, I didn't have any eyebrows. This was before braces. My skin looked similar to how it looks right now. I had more patches right now. This is actually much better controlled than my eczema was, just more widespread. But yeah, and I was like a very small kid. Like in 6th or 7th grade, I was like 4'6". It was insane how much I grew, like seemingly overnight. But yeah, just when I came out of that state and realized, okay, there's this whole other aspect of my identity that I did not necessarily know about, I pretty much dove directly into that. I dove directly into the physicality of things. That's when my cousin Najee introduced me to working out and weightlifting. That was around that time. It was like 2 years after. And so I started trying to get more athletic. I started, trying to dress differently and look differently. And that led me to being more lust driven in most of my interactions when it came to girls. And now going back into that state of, it's like there's some people who talk about being poor is terrible. What's even worse is getting rich and then being broke again, because you have the memories. You have the memories of when you didn't have to deal with the lack, when you didn't have to deal with the day-to-day of, okay, how am I going to make up this margin? And so now I'm in that second quote-unquote poor state where I'm walking through the memories of how things used to be, when I know good and well the Bible tells me not to do so. I know the Bible tells me that fools will look and say those were the good old days. But as a man, as a physical being, it is hard to not look back at times when I didn't have to deal with the things that I'm walking through right now. And here's a word of, knowledge that came to me is, I think I'm walking through what I'm walking through right now to separate the physical vanity that I had from my personality. Right? I know I'm a good looking dude. I'm just going to put that out there. I know I am. But in my current position now as a personal trainer who trains in a commercial big box gym, it would be hard to keep my integrity if I know that I can use my looks to get a better advantage. So I'm selling things to people. I'm selling personal training. I'm selling myself as a trainer. I'm selling so many things that I could have focused solely on the opposite sex. And if I was to do that without what I'm currently walking through right now, I can't say that I would have the same clientele. I can't say that I would have been as honoring to my wife as I am right now, as I try to be right now. Right? And that's me out of humility saying, okay, maybe I was looking at this the wrong way. I know there's an aspect of this that I can't control. And some of this I did bring upon myself unknowingly. I had no idea I was going to walk through TSW, but there's this aspect of, the sovereignty of God that allows for things to happen so that we can become better, so that we can walk through the furnace and become more pure. With that being the case, I take this situation now and I look at everything that is affected and I try to view it in the light of, okay, what aspects of my being, my soul, were not in line with God's will, with where He wants me right now. We're not in line with the fruits of the Spirit. And for me, one of those things, one of the biggest things, was using my physical attributes to get an advantage. So with the suffering that came from this, I'm thankful that I was able to work on things that originally were linked to my vanity, but really focused just on being a man of integrity, a man of His word, and somebody who can grow in that aspect without having to use some sort of coercive technique like physical appearance. So I had to learn how to sell, even though I'm still learning. I'm definitely not an expert, but learning how to sell despite my current appearance. Not learning to sell using my current appearance, right? It's using my current circumstances to show that there's an aspect of me that is a work in progress. I'm not perfect. And so in training other people, I present this understanding that I know I'm not perfect. But what I can do is I can help you figure out the thing that is keeping you from being better tomorrow than you are today. And I can't say I would have gotten that lesson had I not gone through TSW. There's this understanding that everything works together for our good, right? To those that love him and are called according to his purpose. So I know that what is in my mind, the things I know I'm supposed to work on, there's this aspect of professionalism, there's this aspect of expertise, there's this aspect of knowledge that I'll need to have in order to get there. And I think the vanity aspect would have kept me from getting as far as I could go. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not me saying that I want to stay here. But I've given up praying for a shorter timeline. Because I know that there's this aspect of working out persistence and patience in walking through a trial and being able to walk through the tribulations and have it work out its perfect design for me, in me. It's tough to come to that revelation, but I know that this is something that will bring forth fruit that will last. So my mindset has definitely changed, and I definitely think that I'm not in a space anymore where I'm asking to be healed. I'm in a space where I'm asking to be changed. I do what I can, I do what I should, as far as avoiding all the foods and, trying to stay away from triggers, trying to keep my stress as low as possible, and trying to get sleep and drink water and all the things. I do what I should be doing. But if I never get back to where I was 3 years ago, if it means that the ministry that God has called me to will be that much more developed because of it, then I'm learning to accept where I am right now. It's tough, but his thoughts are higher than mine. My kids may never see me in a space where my skin is normal again. They may never see me like that. But if I can give something to the world that I didn't have when I was growing up, maybe that's worth it. The hardest thing that happened a few days ago, I think it was a couple weeks ago actually, I was scrolling through some photos on my phone, and I came across a photo. I think this was around the time me and Ashlyn got married. And I saw a picture of myself and I was like, whoa. I'll put it on screen if I can pull it up. But I forgot how my normal skin looked. I forgot how I looked when I was in a healthier place physically. And I showed Ashlyn and she had pretty much the same response. She was like, whoa. Because it had been so long, we had gotten used to this. We had gotten used to my physical appearance that we kind of forgot about it. But my daughter had never seen me like that because she did. My son has never seen me like that. I know he hasn't. So he's too young to really, to know the difference. But Sarai, when she was, I think, 15 months? 14 months. No, 13 months. She was 13 months. That's when I started walking through TSW. 2023. Yeah, 13 months. So with that being the case, she didn't really have an understanding of what I looked like beforehand. So I showed her a picture of what I looked like back in 2023 or 2022. And I said, that's Dada. And she said, no, it's not. And I said, yeah, that's Dada. And I said, that's you, because I think I was holding her or something like that. And she said, that's Sarai? And I said, yeah, that's Sarai. And she said, Dada. And she looked at me. And then she looked at the picture. And then she looked back at me. Then she looked back at the picture. And then she smiled. But yeah, that was tough. That was tough to hear. But seeing her smile at the end kind of made me hopeful that it's not necessarily that she's looking at me saying, you know, Dada looks a bit different than some of the other people that I see on the street. She just knows me like this, so regardless of what my skin looks like, regardless of if I can go outside as much or not as some of the other parents, she just knows me for me. Now for Aiden, I want him to understand that regardless of what you're walking through, because he walks through some of the similar challenges that I did. He dealt with severe eczema, and now he's back in a place where he's almost in remission, which is great. I didn't get to say that until, you know, I was 11 or 12. I want him to know that you have limitations, but don't let your mind be one of them. I don't want him to limit himself before his body does. So I continue to try and do as much as I can while understanding that I need to cut myself short because I just can't do everything that I used to be able to right now. But I'm choosing to do that, to take care of myself. There's an aspect of choice there, as opposed to I'm just giving up. That's the opposition. That's where I don't want him to go. I don't want him to give up and lose faith and lose sight in who God's calling him to be. I want him to have this understanding that he can do so much more. He can't be everything, he can't do everything, but he can do a lot more than his mind will allow him to. So, learning from my mindset is probably the most important thing that I can pass on to him. Outside of just faith, to know that he's taken care of. It's really it. So, long ramble. I don't know, I just wanted to talk.